Okay, so here I was, 20 miles into a 31-mile race, the Red Tail Ridge 50K, coming down a steep, muddy, and rain-slicked incline for the second time that day. The race consisted of an 18-mile loop back to the start with a 13-mile loop thrown in for good measure. When I came through this section early in the morning, mid-pack of perhaps 150 runners, the path was still fairly firm. Now after 4 to 5 hours of on-again, off-again raining, the ground was a consistency of chocolate frosting. I began the descent, slipping all over the trail, just on the edge of a controlled fall. The descent went on for a half mile or so, my legs burning. I could see the bottom where the trail flattens out, just a few more paces, a few more feet, and then I could relax. Only too soon, my leg came out from under me, and I landed at the base of the hill on my knee, finding a rock in the sea of mud. I'm about to scream out in frustration as I look up and see the race photographer. I laugh and stand up. My knee feels broken. It's not, but something feels broken. I see blood coming out of the mud, caked around my knee, and I lurch forward, trying to gather what dignity I had as the photographer pulls up his camera to take a picture. It's still one of my favorite pictures I have of myself running. I laughed as I passed him. He asked if I was okay. "Been better," I said, and he gave me a thumbs up. I kept shuffling along, unsure of the damage, until he was out of sight, and I slowed to a walk. Not for the first time in that race, I thought about quitting. I was next to a road, an easy extraction point. One call to my wife, and 20 minutes later, this could all be over. Not an hour before, my resolve had initially wavered due to my brief visit at the 18-mile aid station close to the finish line. There are different types of courses, each with their positive and negative attributes. My favorite are point-to-points, where you start at one location and go straight through to the end. These are the fun ones that feel like an epic adventure. A single loop is similar. It has the epic quality of a point-to-point, but at the end of the day, you end up where you began. Next is the out and back. The disadvantage is that you get to run the same trail twice, once going out, once coming back. You'd be surprised, though, that often the same trail looks very different going in the opposite direction, especially if it's at a different time of the day or night. It's a common joke that distance running is 90% mental and the other 10% is in your head. You'd think that running 31 miles is running 31 miles regardless of the course, but it's not. On a point-to-point, no matter where you are on the course, the end is always in front of you. You can quit, but often you still have to keep going to get out. On an out and back, or a single loop, once you make it midway, there's literally no turning back. The only way out is forward. But the hardest, especially when it gets difficult, is a race with multiple loops that go through the start-finish area, and the Red Tail Ridge was such a race. Basically, an 18-mile loop back to the start, followed by a smaller 13-mile loop. You're more than halfway finished, but there you are at the finish line. Tired, sore, only now you have to go back out again. On this cold, rainy day, 18 miles seemed more than enough, and the urge to quit was almost overwhelming. I was unprepared for how difficult it would be to be so close to the finish, so close to being able to just quit and walk away. At that moment, had anyone suggested that I quit, I really don't know what I would have done. In drier, warmer times, I'd made a promise to myself that I would never quit a race. I might get cut for time or pulled from the race, but I would never do it on my own. And yet... After my fall, I kept moving forward. I kept walking. The pain in my leg reduced, and by the time I got to the next hill, I was running, well, shuffling. I mostly walked and shuffled up the next hill, not thinking I would make the cutoff. Almost hoping I wouldn't make the cutoff, but I did. I asked the aid station volunteer for some water to wash the mud off my cut. It was not as bad as it felt. I made the final loop back to the last aid station, this time with a sweeper at my heels. He would come up from behind me, then veer off to pick up one of the course ribbons. Then he'd be back up with me. I made it back to the last aid station with only 5 minutes before cutoff this time. So again, I went off, only this time every step bringing me closer to the finish. I lost the sweeper on the 2-mile downhill stint, but he came up from behind me again as the path went up again. Hills have always been my weakness. And for the last few miles, we went back and forth until I turned the final bend, crossing the small bridge, and came in dead last, the last person to complete under time. But I finished. Every step of that last 13 miles was a struggle. Every aid station, every road, a possible stopping point, but I persisted. This is one of my favorite awards that I have ever received because it reminds me that despite all of that, despite the pain, despite the opportunity, I didn't quit. And even when my effort is exhausted, it's always possible to take one more step, and another, and then another, and then another. And it's kind of like that with life. As we struggle with the stress of life, when things are overwhelming, you sometimes have to forget about the big picture. Forget that you have 13 miles left to go. Instead, ask yourself if you can make it another mile, or can you make it to that tree? Can you make it 2 more steps? 1 more step? And even if you're in last place, or even if you DNF, at least you didn't quit.
I think I'm in last place, but that's okay. First go around. It is slick out here. Very muddy. The only thing more difficult than going uphill in mud is going downhill in mud. All the easy parts are hard.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit like and subscribe below, and hit the notification button if you'd like to know when the next video is uploaded. I work and have a family, so I'm shooting for uploading a video every 2 weeks or so. I'd love to hear about what your goals are and what you hope to achieve. Please write them in the comments below. Now, go out and do great things. Thank you.
I wish I was above the center of attention, but I'm not. I wish I didn't have to give in to the pressure. I'm posting pictures, trying to be someone I'm not. It feels just like I'm lying to you. I fake it, stage it, trying to live some perfect life. I know I'm wasting time, 'cause I just wanna call my friends and see what they're doing tonight. It doesn't have to be so special. I try to be myself, you do the same and we'll be alright.